What's good, everybody? Welcome to the second episode tonight of Mystery Unsolved. I am, of course, your host, and it might look a little laggy, and I apologize. I am currently charging my tablet because it's apparently wonky, and it decided to not work right in the middle of me doing this second video, which I'm now going to be doing again. So, if you remember from watching the Oakville Blobs episode of Mystery Unsolved, I told you this episode had to do with a disappearance and that was kind of famous. Ladies and gentlemen, the second episode of Mystery Unsolved tonight is on the disappearance of Tammy Lynn Leppert. Now, if she sounds familiar, you'll find out why soon enough. So without further ado, Mystery Unsolved, the disappearance of Tammy Lynn Leppert. Tammy Lynn Leppert was born in Rockledge, Florida on February 5th, 1965. She began participating in beauty contests when she was 4 years old, competing in nearly 300 beauty pageants and taking home about 280 crowns. Jesus Christ! Leppert was employed primarily as a model throughout her adolescent and teenage years, appearing on the Cover Girl magazine in October of 1990. Just before her disappearance, here's where you guys know her from. Just before her disappearance, Leppert appeared in the film Scars, a girl who distracts the lookout car during the bloody chainsaw scene. Before that, among other minor roles, she played a party girl in Little Darlings, 1980, and a participant in a boxing match in Bath, 1983. Reportedly, Leppert's legs, hips, and torso were used in the main poster for the latter movie. It is also claimed that she had plans to go to Hollywood in 1983. Leppert had a lead role playing herself in a film called Cover Girl Behind the Scenes. So that's where you know her from, Scarface. She's the one that played the hooker that was on the side of the car that distracted Manny while Tony was inside getting with the chainsaw, right? After the spring break shoot was finished, Leppert went unaccompanied to a party one weekend. According to her close friend, Wing Flanagan, she came home from a party a different person. After performing her role in Scarface, Leppert suddenly returned home after the fourth day of filming. Her mother assumed that Leppert had been afraid of being murdered by, and that she had become overtaken by this delusion. Her mother felt obliged to have her examined by a doctor, but after 72 hours in a medical center, Leppert was released, and there seemed to be no signs of drug or alcohol use, according to a doctor's statement. So, isn't it crazy that she comes home and the mother's like, "Wait, you're having delusions of being murdered?" So originally, I had stated that maybe she's 18 years old, she just finished filming a movie, so maybe the what the film's about kind of made an impression on her and made her all delusional. But then again, maybe it's something else. So which is why the mother was like, let's have you examined, because I don't know if I trust this. But nothing seems to be amiss. So I think it's crazy that she had delusions of being murdered, and then she literally disappears. Leppert was last seen in Cocoa Beach, Florida on July 6, 1983. She was reported to have worn a blue denim shirt decorated with flowers, along with a matching skirt, a gray purse, and sandals. Some agencies have stated that Leppert left without shoes or money. Isn't that always the strangest thing with disappearances? Like, people always leave with, their shoes or their sandals. Something that's supposed to be covering their feet if they go out is missing. And they don't have money on them. Most important things that you should have if you go out somewhere. A male friend told authorities he had an argument with her while driving home in Rockledge and had later left her in a parking lot. Although he is the last person believed to have seen her, he is not considered a suspect. However, Leppert's mother has claimed that her daughter was afraid of him. So the mother is like 2 for 2 in like accidental shit right before her daughter goes missing. After Leppert's disappearance, Cocoa Beach detective Harold Lewis received 2 telephone calls from a woman claiming that Leppert was still alive. In the first call, the woman said that Leppert would make contact when the time was right. During the second call, she said that Leppert was doing what she had always wanted, going to school to become a nurse. Says who? Apparently she wanted to be a star in Hollywood, not a nurse. So this is kind of interesting. The plot thickens, I suppose. At the time of her disappearance, Leppert was between 5'4" and weighed between 105 and 115 pounds. She had curly blonde hair and hazel eyes. Christopher Wilder, an Australian-born serial killer linked to the murders of 12 women across the continental United States, was active at the time of Leppert's disappearance. His modus operandi was to lure women with the promise of photographing them for magazines. I've said photographing like 5 times in my head. It doesn't sound right, but moving on. Leppert's family sued Wilder but eventually halted the process, as some had doubts as to whether he was involved. Wilder was killed in a shootout with police in 1984. Dude didn't even make it past like a year of her disappearing and he was dead. Authorities have not linked Wilder to Leppert's disappearance. So, isn't it just convenient that there was like a serial killer active around the time that she went to... I can understand why they made the connection. You know what I mean? The person of interest was John Crutchley, a convicted kidnapper and rapist who was suspected of killing as many as 30 women. Crutchley committed suicide in prison in 2002. Apparently, so there was some crazy shit going on in Florida in 1983. Crazy shit. Leppert's mother theorized that her daughter could have been murdered due to her knowledge of local drug trafficking. She said Leppert exhibited signs of paranoia, as she was curious when consuming food and would not drink from open containers. She had also allegedly filed a report to police. So the mother is now 3 for 3, right? First thing she says is that her daughter was afraid of the man. Then she says that her daughter was afraid of being murdered. Is that her perhaps knew too much or knew the wrong people, or was hanging out with the wrong people. Several age progressions have created to show what Leppert may have looked like if she was still alive, by forensic artists Dan Soletti, Diana Trepkov, and those from the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, the NCMEC. Profiles detailing the case have been created by the DOE Network, National Missing and Unidentified Person System, NAMIS, and NCMEC, in hopes of generating leads from tips. The profile has been since processed, but her dental records and fingerprints have not been assessed by local police. It is believed that her dental information had been acquired at some point, but that poor record keeping resulted in the data being lost. So they have information, they have kind of like evidence, but not like enough of her DNA and stuff to really, pinpoint anything. The television program Unsolved Mysteries profiled Leppert's disappearance in the season 5 premiere in September 1992. And the reason I mention that is because I'm going to be going to a second article from Unsolved Mysteries, unsolved.com, so we can find out a little bit more on the disappearance of Lynn Leppert. Again, we might come across some information that I've already stated, but we're probably going to come across information that I have not. So, Tammy Lynn Leppert was an uncommonly beautiful child. She entered her first beauty contest when she was just 4 years old. By the age of 16, she had already competed in more than 300 beauty contests and had taken home 280 crowns. Her mother, Linda Curtis, a theatrical and model agent, guided Tammy's career. Wynn Flanagan, who was a close friend, he and Tammy were like brother and sister. See, we had him in the last article, but we didn't know how close they were. She would bend over and kiss me on the cheek, and I couldn't quite ever get it completely off. It was rather embarrassing to walk around with this mark. I think I actually learned to wear it proudly after a while, because it was almost a status symbol. In July of 1982, Tammy landed a part in the teen exploitation film Spring Break. When the movie completed filming, Tammy went unchaperoned to a weekend party. She came back a different person. According to Wing, Tammy's behavior began to take on paranormal overtones. Sometimes I'd ask her what was on her mind, if anything was in her, and she'd usually change the subject or say, "Oh, nothing, and then try to laugh it off. According to her mother, Linda, she even thought someone was trying to kill her. Then she said, "Mom, what would you say if I told you somebody was trying to kill me?" I just took a deep breath and I said, "Do you think someone's trying to kill you, Tammy?" She said, "Yes." A steady retreat into isolation soon followed for Tammy. Linda and Wing had no way of ascertaining which of Tammy's fears were real and which were paranoid delusions. After weeks of virtual seclusion, Tammy Lynn was offered a small part in the big budget Al Pacino film Scarface. So this is interesting. So now we know that she was actually paranoid before she got the role in Scarface, which began shooting in Miami in March of 1983. She stayed with a family friend, Walter Libowitz. According to Walter, all went well until the fourth day of filming. I received a call from the casting director to tell me Tammy had a breakdown on the set. They said that it was a scene where someone was supposed to be shot and had artificial blood spurt out. And they said Tammy was watching the scene. She started crying hysterically, and it got so bad that she had to take her to a trailer. Tammy Lynn quit the film and went back home. Oh, so she filmed her scene, which is, of course, the scene. I've already said this, but I like to remind you. Um, the scene where she's at the car and she's a hooker and she's distracting Manny while Tony's in the house with the guy with the chainsaw. At her, did talk to the local sheriff, but apparently never mentioned that she felt her life was in danger. Even with her family, Tammy's paranoia ran rampant. Rampant! Oh my god, I can't talk. According to Wayne, Tammy was now convinced that someone was trying to poison her. There were good days and there were bad days. There were days when she was almost normal, and there were other days when she was really edgy. Then on July 1st, Tammy finally snapped. She began smashing all the windows in her house and started attacking Wayne. It was at that moment that Linda knew something seriously wrong with her daughter. I handled that incident, but I didn't know if I was going to be able to handle the next one. Tammy's mother checked her into a mental health center for a complete physical and psychiatric evaluation. Doctors found no evidence of drug or alcohol use. After 72 hours of observation, Tammy was released the following day. Tammy and her friend drove to a local beach. When, according to Detective Jim Scragg of the Cocoa Beach, Florida Police Department, they started to argue. This friend picked her up at the home and they drove to the beach. And we talked to him, and he basically stated that they'd become involved in a verbal argument. She had requested that he let her out near the glass bank in Cocoa Beach, and he complied. Tammy's friend said he dropped her off about 5 miles from her house. She was barefoot and carried no purse. Again, isn't it just so convenient that she doesn't have any of her belongings, nothing on her feet, and no money? Which is like, I'm gonna go missing 101. No, no footwear, no belongings, no money. Tammy Lynn Leppert is 5'4" tall, and at the time of her disappearance, I already said that. All right, so that's what we have. I thought Unsolved Mysteries website had a little bit more. So, all right. So here's what we know. She was already paranoid before she got the role on the film Scarface. And her mother knew this, and her friend Wayne, which is a really weird first name, but I've heard weirder. Both of them knew that she was paranoid. So, and she feared that someone was going to kill her. Now, the mother, like I said, was 3 for 3. The last thing that the mother thought was that Tammy was talking to or traffickers. And because she knew she had information that this could probably be the reason that she feared for her life. So let's get into the theories, shall we? Theory number 1, Tammy Lynn Leppert is very much still alive and went into under an assumed name, maybe even checked into witness protection, who knows. Theory number 2 appeared, which in fact she did, but maybe her delusions were so bad that, she's still alive, but carrying on, this crazy, I don't know. She disappeared and we don't know what happened to her, I guess is theory number 2. Theory number 3, she was killed by drug traffickers. That's pretty much all we got to go on here. Now let's break down the theories and see which ones I like. Do I think she's still alive? I would love nothing more than to believe that Tammy Lynn Leppert is still alive, but the evidence and just read kind of says otherwise, right? She was already paranoid before the film Scarface. It only got worse. She quit the film. Her paranoia got worse over time. And yeah, I just feel like it probably just took on like its own being, if you will. I think it became too much for her. And she very much just kind of went off. Maybe she tried to get away and then the drug traffickers caught up with her, which leads me into the second theory. I think she was killed by drug traffickers. Why haven't they found her body? Well, they're drug traffickers. They're bad people. They could have tossed her into the ocean. They could have done so many things to her, which are not important in this particular instance. But I just feel like a lot of signs point to her being killed, unfortunately, because, they're in Miami for one. They're filming the film Scarface, which is about drugs. And this poor girl knows real drug traffickers in Miami in the 80s. Like, that plus that equals a very unfortunate outcome. So, very unfortunately is that Tammy Lynn Leppert has died and was killed in 1983, probably a few days after she disappeared. What do you think? What do you think happened to Tammy Lynn Leppert? Do you think she actually is still alive somewhere out there under an assumed name in witness protection? Do you think that she disappeared and just kind of is just living under her same name, but is just kind of keeping it casual somewhere, maybe in another country? Or do you think that, what I think, that she met an unfortunate fate and was killed by drug traffickers? Do let me know in the comments. I do hope you enjoyed this second episode of the double feature of Mystery Unsolved. And again, hiatus over. I did the Oakville Blobs, the disappearance of Tammy Lynn Leppert, and hopefully this means that I am back in business and will be doing these every Friday. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button so you know anytime that I go live. And if you're watching this on the playback, you can still do that. And finally, I will let you know what next week's episode is going to be about. Give me a minute. Next week on Mystery Unsolved, The Lost Girls of Panama. What does that mean? I guess you'll have to tune to find out. For Mystery Unsolved,